First of all, I think there's one question that everybody has in their minds. How is it possible for your country to have an independent policy in the Arctic, given that you are part of the United Kingdom and also the European Union?
Well, I suppose we have to be very respectful of the position, legal position as it stands. This is not a governmental conference, so it means that we can directly engage with the Arctic Circle Assembly in our own right and promote our own policies without undermining any efforts that the UK may have to make through other forums. And we have for many years sought to engage with the Arctic Circle Assembly, as I've said, with the First Minister's presence to try and promote the positive policies we have put in place around climate change, try and encourage others to follow our lead in areas where we've got devolved responsibility within the UK framework. And that we hope, by doing that, we hope we play a positive role in the process.
You're, of course, as a country, not that big, but in terms of energy, you're a giant. Your energy policy, is that a part of your general idea for Arctic policy?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's critical to our decarbonisation aims. Scotland has achieved great things on electricity decarbonisation. As I say, we've now able to deliver almost, well, slightly over 3/4 the electricity we need from renewables. We've a lot to do on heat, and we can learn from countries like Iceland, Denmark, Norway, and other partners that are around the table here about how they have tackled renewable heat. And in areas such as transport, I think we've got a common problem, a common challenge to decarbonise our transport emissions. They account for about 1/4 of the energy we consume in Scotland, but 37% of the emissions we generate. So we've got a responsibility as an industrialised country to protect the Arctic and other regions of the world by decarbonising our transport.
Thank you. So I would like to invite the public for questions.
My name is Karl Petersen from Denmark. For the Arctic, satellite and space is very important. Satellite communication, broadband communication, surveillance, etc., etc. I trust that Scotland has an ambitious space program. Could you please comment a little bit on that?
Absolutely. It's an important point. We've actually had a site identified in a process led by the UK government that has been identified in Amoyne in the Caithness area of Scotland, very north of the mainland of Scotland, which will be a vertical launching site for satellites. That's the proposal, and it's being developed. And you're absolutely right, there are latitudes where there's poor sort of coverage in terms of satellite provision for mobile telephony. As part of my portfolio is mobile telephony and broadband provision. And we are sort of obviously keen to see how we can improve coverage in remote and rural areas of Scotland and indeed beyond through improved coverage of satellites for that purpose. It is obviously an area we have to demonstrate great responsibility as well, because as we start to open up new trajectories for catapulting satellites into orbit, and particularly low orbit satellites, we need to be very careful about we don't create any environmental harms as a consequence of that. So that's an important part to us, and we'll collaborate with the UK government in making sure that is done safely, responsibly, and that we are responsible in terms of our international obligations there. But it is a great opportunity for sites in northern latitudes around the Arctic to do that. It has to be done with sensitivity, though.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Mark Lantain, University of Tromsø. One trend that we have seen from London regarding developing Arctic policy has been a much greater focus on defense and potential hard security and military challenges appearing in the Arctic. So I was wondering if you can comment on how Scotland may respond to these challenges. Okay.
Well, as I say, I mean, our framework is very much about the human dimension of Arctic policy. The earlier point that was made around the situation we're a devolved government within a UK framework at present. As you know, we have proposals to do something different there, but I'll keep it diplomatic here. But certainly the UK government leads on defence. We obviously have an interest in that, but we're trying to focus in areas such as climate science, the human dimension, how we protect rural communities, tackle common problems like rural poverty, rural fuel poverty, where many of our island communities are facing very high costs to heat their homes. So we need to decarbonise in a way that doesn't, cost the earth. And so we are trying to do the responsible thing in terms of trying to focus on areas around communities in the Arctic, the environment of the Arctic. Clearly we have an interest in that, but we have no policy locus at this point in time to influence that, other than through lobbying UK ministers. So that's helpful, but it does put a constraint on how we can engage in those matters. So we're focusing on areas through the likes of the Assembly here that we feel we have a real role to play at present using the powers we have, and we can hopefully be constructive, positive partners in that.
So I think we have time for one more question.
I'm getting off lightly.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, hit someone at the back.
Hello, Floris Goijmans from the Netherlands. To kind of follow up on what you just said, do you think Scotland has enough power right now to kind of have their own Arctic policy? Well, you obviously just presented on it, but do you think that an independent Scotland would better be able to fulfill like Scotland's policy, Scotland's desires in the Arctic?
Clearly, if Scotland was a sovereign state in its own right, and we had our own seat at the EU top table, which we would aim to have, to partly answer the previous questioner's answer, we want to play a positive role. We are trying in every way we possibly can to demonstrate we're responsible global citizens. We are progressive, positive partners. We want to tackle climate change. We want to work with others. And therefore, we have an existing policy of defence collaboration through NATO, for example, if we were an independent country. But we are pushing the case for independence for Scotland, clearly, and that will play out in due course. But we would certainly want to put across that we are keen to collaborate with our neighbours and to work in common interests of all our neighbours, and in areas whether it's defence, the environment, trade policy, we want to be positive partners, and as a sovereign state we could clearly do that in our own right rather than have to work through the UK at present.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.